All right, welcome everybody to the Soul Unleashed podcast. My name, of course, is Mike Nicholas, and I'm really happy today to have Gabriella Juliano-Villani. Did I pronounce that right?
You said it perfectly.
Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Where are you?
I am in hot and sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's hotter in Phoenix, so it's hard to feel sorry for anybody right now if you're not in Phoenix.
I know that's like the surface of the sun over there, so I can't really complain.
Gabriella, what I'm going to do is just read your bio here real quick, just to set everybody, and then you can correct me where I make mistakes.
Okay.
Let's see. Gabriella is a licensed clinical social worker, consultant, coach, entrepreneur, and educator based in Sarasota, Florida. She has been in the mental health field for over a decade, specializing in stress, chronic health conditions, and trauma. After realizing her own burnout in 2021, she sold her thriving group practice and made it her mission to educate others on the impact that stress has on our everyday lives. Gabriella pulls from her experience as an EMDR. I don't know what that means, but you can explain in a minute. Gabriella pulls from her experience as an EMDR and, can you pronounce that, Polyvagal?
Polyvagal.
Polyvagal. You have to explain that too. That'd be awesome.
I will.
So Gabriella pulls from her experience as an EMDR and polyvagal informed therapist to utilize mind-body approaches to help others implement everyday strategies to manage stress and live their best lives. Gabriella is an international speaker, retreat leader, and has been featured in Authority Magazine, The Daily Om, Bustle, and the Everyday Woman TV network. Cool. When she's not working, Gabriella is teaching Zumba. Man, I would die doing that. When she's not working, Gabriella is teaching Zumba, surfing, and reading a psychological thriller at the beach. All right.
That's me.
That's you. All right. Well, good. So, Gabriella, just to also set the table a little bit, my listeners are primarily left-brain skeptics, I think. I'm a left-brain skeptic. And so the whole point of this podcast was to find people that can help us left-brain types navigate and find proof of the spiritual awakening that we're going through. So people that kind of wake up to being spiritual, realize there's maybe more outside the Bible, maybe more outside what we were raised with, are the kind of people that I think find my podcast and my other things. So that's kind of how I will focus the questions as I talk to you.
Okay.
Okay. So please start off and expound on anything I screwed up there or didn't explain properly. I appreciate it.
No, I think you did pretty good. But yeah, I think that's pretty much most of it. I went through my own spiritual awakening, started last year, although it may have started sooner. And I think that is also what really helped me shift and pivot into a life that is more aligned with my values and how I want to live and work. That makes me happy.
How would you define a spiritual awakening for you? What does that mean?
So to me, I should back up here. I always kind of had this feeling that there was something else or like something more, but I didn't really know what that meant or what that looked like. And I knew that there were people out there who were like mediums or who had premonitions and those types of things that I was like, that's not me, but I kind of feel like maybe that is me, but I don't really think that's real and I don't really know how that works. So I kind of always just had pushed it aside. And last year, I went on a wellness retreat for therapists, and somebody there read my astrological chart, my birth chart. And she said, you have like 3 houses in the 12th or 3 planets in the 12th house. So you're like a super seer, but you probably already knew that. And I was like, maybe, what does that mean? And I want all the evidence. I want all the facts. Like, what does it mean? Show me, tell me. And she was like, just keep leaning into it. And so that's what I did. And once I did that, some other unexplained things started happening. And I felt like that was a call for me to pay attention and to sit, quote unquote, lean into that.
So tell us some stories about unexplained things that might have happened that verified for you that there was something else going on?
So some of the things that happened in the past were, and I thought that everybody had this, and apparently not everybody does, is I just kind of know things. Like I knew how people were going to react. I knew if something was going to go right or wrong. And friends would always be like, how did you know that? How did you know that person was lying? How did you know this? I'm like, I just know. Doesn't everybody have that knowing inside of them? And so I think that is something that I've paid attention to throughout my life. The biggest one through like the unexplained things, I guess. I'm really nervous to talk about this because I haven't shared this like publicly before. So the biggest one that happened was I had been doing more meditation after this retreat and really just quote unquote again leaning in. I had met with a shaman, I had met with energy healers, and so I was just kind of paying attention to these things more. And I was home alone and in this office at like 11 o'clock at night. And when I turned to close this office door, I saw somebody in here. And I thought maybe I was imagining it, but they reacted to me seeing them. They like jumped back. And so first I thought somebody had broken into my house because my husband was away on a business trip. And I like slammed the door shut and I was freaking out and I was ready to call 911, and I just kind of waited a second and like settled in, and I realized the person that I had seen was somebody that I knew, and it was my mother-in-law who passed away a few years ago. So that was terrifying to me, and that's also what pushed me to start working with somebody to understand, because I was like, something is happening here and either I'm losing my mind or this is, there's some sort of shift happening in my life that I need to attend to.
When you say you started working with someone, was that someone like a medium? How did you work on that?
She is like an energy healer. She refers to herself as a shaman and a medium. And I knew her through a friend of a friend, but I felt like I needed somebody like that who wouldn't judge me and who would maybe be able to help me understand what was happening and what I was going through. And working with her was super helpful and life-changing, and there was no judgment, and it was really helpful to be around somebody who was supportive and who knew what I was talking about and could help me work through it.
Can you share your religious upbringing, or what kind of religious background do you come from and approach these kind of things?
I technically grew up Catholic, partly. So I made my first communion. And even that was, I wouldn't really say we were religious. It was just kind of like the thing that you were supposed to do in my community. So I did it. But I never felt, what's the word I'm looking for? It never sat well with me. I just didn't really understand it. I had a really hard time wrapping my head around a lot of the things that I was hearing when I would go to church or when I would go to Sunday school. It like just didn't really make sense to me. So I kind of rejected that. And for the rest of my life, I just was like, I don't think that there is religion. I don't think that there's a God. I'm more atheist. But that is where I initially grew up, I guess, or that's like where it started, was being in the Catholic Church.
Do you now believe there's a God or a presence? What's your perspective of that?
I believe in something. I don't necessarily believe in a God, but I do believe in the energy in the universe and that there is some sort of, I call it like source, but that's what it means to me.
So, if I could just jump to what you think happens to our energy when we die, the concept's called eschatology, but what do you think happens to us when we pass? are we still, are we still there? Like you saw your mother-in-law, that was obviously energy that came back to you. How does that work, do you think?
I'm still figuring that out, but I think that, I don't believe in heaven or hell. I do believe in energy, and I believe in energy that is serving us and energy that is not serving us. And that, when we die, it might go to a place where it might feel like I'm thinking about like ghosts or like spirits. I feel like that's where maybe there's something unresolved and it gets kind of stuck. But I feel that when we pass, it does go to, I don't know if a different dimension is the right word, but I guess that's kind of how I think of it. Like it's no longer in a physical body, but it does still exist. Our souls still exist.
Do you have any stories where you have made contact with that energy on the other side?
I do. So part of what I worked through when I was working with this person who's a medium and a shaman, she has a program that I decided to sign up for. And part of that was mediumship. And I had to practice. And again, I was like, this is probably not something I can do. I don't really know if I have like this ability. But it really is just about like tuning in. And I think there's actually a couple instances, but one that really sticks out to me is I told one of my friends, I have to practice this. Will you let me practice with you? And, don't be upset if nothing comes through. Like I'm new. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I always minimize. And
Sure.
she's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. So we're about to get on Zoom and, before we get on to Zoom, I had this fleeting thought of a person's name, and we get onto Zoom and I'm like, okay, like even before we're like officially getting started, I told her, I was like, this name came into my head. I don't know if it means anything to you. And when I said it, she just started crying. And she's like, that is my grandfather who passed when I was 7. My best friend doesn't even know his name. Like, how could you possibly know that was him, and he helped raise me. And so that was really powerful, and it's just nice to get that validation.
Do you still practice those gifts, or what? I apologize. We're this far into the interview. I haven't asked you what you do exactly, but if you could just share that, that'd be great, please.
Yeah, so I do a lot of different things. I am no longer practicing therapy, as we read in my bio. I pivoted from doing that. It was just really too draining and because of my own burnout. So now I do a blend of a lot of different things. I do coaching, consulting, training, and speaking, all on burnout prevention and our nervous system. But I also blend in intuitive work, which is kind of what we're talking about here. And I also do these kinds of readings one-on-one with people. I am also a certified sound healer. So when I'm doing sound healing, I often will get what I call like intuitive hits about things like this. And I'll process them and share them with my clients. And I also do retreats where we do a lot of this work too.
Since you mentioned it, I did see something somewhere about the concept of a sound bath. What
Yes.
is that?
So, a sound bath is where you are bathed in sound. And we do this using Tibetan bowls, crystal singing bowls, all different kinds of instruments, sometimes our own voice, even, or tuning forks, drums, chimes, whatever, gongs. And it's also called vibrational medicine. So, we pick up on the vibrations and the energy that your body is setting off, and we'll use certain sounds to clear stuck energy, restore energy. I've even worked with people on like specific physical ailments that they wanted to heal. And it's one of my favorite ways now to help people.
When you say we, is there like a team that does this, or how does one undergo a sound bath?
So if you wanted to do a sound bath, I actually do them for free sometimes on my Instagram, or you could book with me one-on-one, or look in your community. There's a lot of people who do them in person. Usually it's just one person. Sometimes it might be more, and you simply would just oftentimes you'll lay down because you want to be comfortable, and you'll set an intention, and then you're just there. And we use the instruments again to clear energy. Oftentimes you'll go into a deeper state of meditation, which is again where healing and higher consciousness might be happening, if that is something that's accessible to you. But the people who are doing it, like me, I went through a certification program. So there are trainings out there for us to be able to do this appropriately and correctly.
So you mentioned shaman. Can you just kind of address that term? Obviously has, at least in my world, kind of a negative connotation. You know, people with bones in their nose and blood drippings on the floor and that kind of thing. So what's your understanding of what the term shaman means?
A shaman is a healer. And also, another definition that I really like is somebody that can see in the dark. So, somebody that is going into different states of consciousness to get information or for healing. And that term is, I think we have to be careful about how we use that too. That's what she calls herself. I think that, oftentimes shamans are, they are chosen people from indigenous cultures. So that can look different, but there are shamans from all over the world in every different culture and every different religion. So even though you might, not you, but your listeners might think that that's what a shaman looks like, I mean, there are healers in every culture, every religion, and they all look a little bit different and have different practices.
Okay. Um, do you have the gift of intuition now? I mean, how do you express or use that now? What does that mean?
I do. And that is something that this kind of goes with the polyvagal theory. I have to be I have to be tuned in, and I have to be in a place where I'm able to access that. So if I'm stressed or overworked or overwhelmed, I am not living my life or using my intuition because I can't use that part of me. I'm in a place where I'm fearful, stressed, and I'm like basically in fight or flight, and I can't access that, which is normal. It's normal to go through that. But I use my intuition in a lot of different ways. I use it with things like a knowing, things that I'm feeling. I will see things usually in my mind's eye or in my third eye that I'll use for my intuition. I will get intuitive hits in dreams or when I'm doing sound healing, and even just by other like signs, like animals that cross my path or little synchronicities.
And what does polyvagal mean?
Polyvagal talks about our vagus nerve, and that is a theory about how our nervous system responds to threats of safety and threats of danger around us in our environment.
Okay. So I want to ask you something more personal. If this is too much, just tell me. Just tell me we're not going to discuss this. But I've been married a long time, right? 40, whatever it is, 47 years. If my wife had the kind of gift that you have, it would scare me silly. So how do you deal with personal relationships, or your husband deal with that? You know, if you're the kind of person that is intuitive like this, has that ever been an issue for you?
It hasn't been an issue. I think sometimes people kind of want to take advantage of it, and they're like, why can't you just tell me what the winning lottery numbers are? Something like that. And it doesn't work that way. It's something that I have to help other people. And my husband is, I think he probably knew, even though he is, I wouldn't say he's a skeptic, but I think that he's just very open-minded, and he grew up a little bit around this type of thing because his mom was actually very much into energy healing and yoga, and even right before she passed, she gave me a bracelet with all the different chakra colors on it.
Oh,
So I
cool.
think he had he had been like exposed to that a little bit, so he wasn't like totally freaked out or surprised. He was a little freaked out when I told him what happened when I saw her in my office.
I'll bet.
But he is pretty open and understanding, and he never like questions me.
That's awesome. Do you turn this gift on and off as you want, or does it just come to you when you are doing things throughout the day?
It usually comes to me when I am just like really grounded and like very present. Um, so, and sometimes that is throughout the day. And then sometimes I do set specific boundaries. Like sometimes I just have very vivid dreams that like even verge on disturbing or just like very active at night when I'm dreaming. And so a lot of times I'll set a boundary before I go to sleep that like I don't want to be disturbed and I just, I need to sleep tonight and now's not the time to connect with me.
Do you believe in the concept of spirit guides, or have you had that experience?
Yes, I do believe in that. And yes, I have had that experience as well.
Have you met your spirit guides, and how, if so, how'd you do that?
I have met them, and how I have met them is through dreams, through sound healing, and also I have a very specific meditation practice called shamanic journeying, where we listen to drums, and it does bring you into a deeper, or some people say an altered state of consciousness, but it changes your brain waves, and that's usually the easiest and most accessible way for me to meet them.
Okay. Have you mentioned something too, what I saw earlier about Akashic Records. Do you have any stories that you can relate about experiences with that for my listeners? I think most of them know what Akashic Records are, kind of like the Book of Life or the Big Book of Life, or
Hmm.
the place where everything is stored
Yes.
um, that you've ever done. And there's I think the Jewish religion believes in the Book of Life. Most of us think of the Book of Life when we get to heaven. St. Peter's got it open up, and you're judged based upon that. But Akashic Records, I think, is a much bigger concept of everything that's ever happened. But can you relate your experiences with that?
Yes. So that is for me another way of, I guess I would call it channeling. But I do Akashic Records readings and I've done them for myself. And I think the best example or story that I have is when I was doing one for myself. I don't think I had a specific question. I was just like, just tell me, just show me if there's something I need to know. And so I usually write and I just write whatever's coming in and coming in. And I kept hearing this word, Girana, which I don't even know if I'm saying that right. And when I wrote it down, I was like, that must be something that I made up because I'd never heard of it before. I was like, maybe it's somebody's name. Um, so I Googled it, of course. We have that. It's nice that we can do that to get validation. And when I Googled it, it's actually an ancient Mayan traditional dance. And I feel very connected to Mayan culture. And I have had, even before I went through all of this, other energy healers saying, like, you have definitely connections and roots to Mayan culture. And so that was another just experience or validation or evidence of whatever you want to call it. But it's cool to see that. It's nice that we have Google to help us with that now, because I was like, I'm totally just making this up. I don't even know what that is. But no, it is a real thing.
And that's how you do it. You write down when you hear things.
For me, I do. Um, it just is easier for me. I don't know. That's just what I feel called to do. So when I get like these intuitive hits sometimes, or if I'm specifically coming out of journeying, or if I am doing Akashic Records, I always write down what's coming through.
So, what would you say to somebody, to yourself 10 years ago, somebody that thinks that this is a little bit wacky,
Hmm.
and you're not sure whether what you're getting or hearing is just in your head or whether it's actually coming from something outside of you? What guidance or suggestions would you give to somebody like that?
I would encourage you to trust yourself. Trust that that's your intuition. Hear what it has to say. I think it's also important. Well, so I'll say that in a second. First, trust yourself. I think that there's no harm in being open to knowing that there are many different things that could happen in this life, even like with astrology. Sometimes when people will tell me they don't believe in astrology, I'm like, well, the planets and the moon literally moves the ocean. So I think that maybe that has a little bit of an impact on humans because we're mostly water based. So it's kind of the same thing, just being open that there are alternative ways of getting information and hearing information. But as a therapist, I will also say if you are somebody that, is hearing things that feel dangerous or unhelpful, or you're having a hard time understanding if it is your intuition or if it's something else, if you feel like maybe you're not really grounded in reality, then that's important for you to take some next steps and reach out and get help from a professional.
Yeah, that's an aspect I haven't even thought about. But I was thinking about the good side of things, where you're getting information. You're getting
I
information
try
that.
to. And then I think of like, I have had clients who, do struggle with mental illness, and the information that they're hearing might be really scary or telling them to do something to hurt somebody else or something like that. So I think it's important to just notate that too.
I know you don't know this, but we had a son who was bipolar for a long time. He's passed now, but I'm very familiar with that struggle in terms of trying to understand what's coming to you, or reacting to what you're hearing. That was
Yeah.
something he went through. Um,
I'm sorry to hear that.
well, that's just been part of my journey. So
Hmm.
have you done the astrology thing more than once?
The birth chart.
Astrology reading, like you mentioned, that it really changed you
Hmm.
when you did it. Have you done it since?
I have not. I just did it the one time with her. And I mean, I have an app on my phone that like kind of tells me like your Venus is in whatever. So you might be feeling like this today, but that is definitely an area I don't have a ton of training on. Um, but you know what? It would be good to do it again to see how it's changed, because it
But
does change based on like your location and the time of year and all those things.
but you believe that it has some validity. It's not something that you just read the funny pages of the newspaper where you get your horoscope for the day, right? It's more serious than that.
I do believe it has some validity, and that just kind of goes along with the fact that there's more information, there's more ways for us to understand ourselves than just, I don't know, just therapy or just being here and now. We can use these other things that we have access to, like our intuition or astrology. So I don't think it's the end all be all. But I do think that it has given me some insight into myself and how I operate.
Okay, I'll wrap this up here pretty soon because I told you we try to keep it under 30 minutes.
That's okay. If you have
um,
more questions, I have the whole hour blocked.
the concept of dying and death, has there, you already mentioned that you don't believe in heaven or hell. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yep. Yep.
So have you come across anything in your experience, be it intuition or readings, that would indicate any type of judgment that we go through when we pass?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I My first gut reaction is no, because I really just think it's energy. I don't think it's like judgment. I don't think it's good or bad. I think that there are so many other things that go into it, and I don't think so. I don't.
What would you say to someone who lost a loved one due to some heinous act or murder or something, and they live their lives expecting that the person that committed that act is going to get judged, sent to hell when they die, and that prevents us as human beings from maybe taking actions on our own because we believe there's going to be some type of justice later in the next life. What would you say to somebody like that believes in that?
I think that we're all allowed, and it's great to have our own belief system and what works, but I don't know that it's helpful to live your life with that hope or expectation, because it may or may not happen, right? So I would encourage you to do what you need to do in the here and now to either make peace with that or accept that or process that in a way that you can move through life without I shouldn't say without carrying it, because I think you always carry it, especially if you've had trauma or if you have had like a very traumatic death experience like that. You don't just move on from it, right? Like you carry it with you and it changes. But that's where the work comes in, is like how can you keep on living and still have that pain and that hurt there, because it will probably always be there. So those two things can be true at once, even though it feels really difficult.
Okay. But there's nothing you've come across that would indicate that we get judged, or obviously you don't believe in hell, but how about heaven? Is there any type of reward that we get, or do you believe in reincarnation?
I do believe in that. I do believe that our souls go off, the energy goes off, and it could come back in a different type of body. But I think as far as judgment, I would think that if there is any, it's probably the judgment and the expectations that we put on ourselves.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. What would you like to cover or mention that I have not covered?
Um, I don't think there's anything left that I feel like we missed, but do you have any other questions?
Can you just explain to my listeners, because I want them to be able to reach out to you if they want your help, or to benefit from what you do. So if you can just kind of cover how you can help them and how they can get in touch with you, I think that'd be great.
Yeah. So if you want to work with me, if you are a small business owner and you want to learn how to scale your business using me, intuitive coaching, or some other sort of support, I'm happy to help you. I also do, like I said, one-on-one sound healing. I do intuitive readings, and I also have a retreat coming up in Belize at the end of January, where we'll be focusing more on a lot of the things we talked about, including sound healing, to help us better manage our stress and prevent burnout. Now, all that info is on my website, GabrielleJuliano-Villani.com. I am on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Gabrielle Juliano-Villani, and then Instagram is at GJV Consulting.
Awesome. I think you may have already sent those to me, but I'll put those all in the show notes
Okay.
for our listeners, both for the video version and the podcast version. How long is the retreat?
It is technically 6 days. It's January 25th to January 30th, 2024.
Sounds like a great time to go to Belize.
It does. It's going to be cold up north.
Awesome. Well, Gabrielle, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me and joining my listeners. And any last words?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me, Mike. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you. It has been. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thanks again.
Don't hang up.
Okay, I won't.